So, a few months ago, I received an email from a Mandarin learner called Chris Foley. And Chris had been studying Mandarin for a number of years and he could already hold conversations in the language. And after marrying his Chinese wife, he decided to set a more ambitious goal to sharpen his spoken delivery, in particular his pronunciation and tones, in time for his Chinese wedding ceremony in 12 months' time. So soon after receiving this email, I got back in touch with Chris and he signed up for the I'm Learning Mandarin gym to have me as his coach guiding him through the process of improving his spoken Chinese tones and pronunciation. And he committed to documenting his progress with monthly blogs, which I've linked to in the description, as well as video interviews at the 6 month point and again at the 12-month mark. And so in this video, I interview Chris entirely in Mandarin Chinese to reflect on his progress over the past 6 months. Hello, Chris。
嗨，米莎，你最近怎么样？
最近很好，你呢？
哦，很好。你还在台湾吗？
我还在台湾。然后最近你搬到了伦敦是吗？
是是，对，但是我很羡慕，因为我从来没去过台湾。
你想来台湾吗？
对对对，我很想去，可能在未来几年，我可以去台湾拜访你，好不好？
那可以啊，可以。然后首先你可以简单的自我介绍一下吗？因为我们的听众们他们可能不知道你是谁，你叫什么名字，来自什么国家呢？
好好好，大家好，密室的听众，我叫 Chris，但是我的中国朋友用我的中文名字小芳，我是爱尔兰人，但是我最近刚搬到伦敦，因为我在这里有一个工作机会，
嗯。
我在一个美国科技公司工作，但是他们的欧洲办公室是在伦敦，所以这就是为什么我在这里。
啊，OK，那你为什么开始学中文呢？
这个有点复杂，我开始学中文差不多7年以前，因为我在大学去香港交换一年，你的听众肯定知道，香港人不太用普通话，他们用广东话。不过我的香港人同学给我说，我们都会说英语，你不需要学广东话，普通话更有用，所以我在那边开始学中文。但是没有很多机会练习。不过我回来爱尔兰的时候，我没有系统学习一点自学和一点中文课。不过几年前我的想法改变了，我觉得你的听众可以猜到为什么。呃，因为我认识了一个很好的中国女生，哦，她现在是我的老婆。所以很老套的故事，对不对？
那你是怎么认识你的老婆呢？
好问题，因为很多人以为我在中国认识他，不过在实际上我在爱尔兰认识他。因为你记得我刚才跟你说我在大学去香港交换一年，不
嗯。
过他在大学去爱尔兰交换一年，所以我回来爱尔兰的时候在杜柏林大学认识他，所以非常幸运，我觉得。
那很好。那你刚开始学中文的时候，你觉得中文最难学的地方是什么呢？
我觉得学中文最难的部分肯定是发音。我刚开始学中文的时候，我以为读汉字是最难的部分，但
嗯。
是现在我觉得发音更难，因为我觉得每个人可以读汉字，你只需要花时间学习。不过，中国发音是完全不一样的挑战。呃，你可以听起来我的发音还不是很好，但是我最近看到了很大的进步。
对，你的发音现在比以前好多了，我觉得。那你觉得
嗯。
你刚才说发音是最难学的地方，那你觉得发音什么方面最难？
我觉得学词汇的时候，我可以记得这个词汇的发音，但
嗯。
是我觉得说句子的时候，我一直忘了这个发音是什么，所以我觉得最难的部分是说句子的发音。
那你学中文的过程当中，你有没有接触到中国文化，比如说节目、习俗、历史等等？因为最近
哦，
你去了那个圣诞节的时候，你去了中国，对吧？就看你的老婆的家人是吗？
对对对，出国这个旅行太开心了。
嗯
因为这个是我的第一次去中国过春节，
嗯
呃，春节让我很像圣诞节的感觉，比如和你的家人一起吃饭和看电视，所以很像圣诞节。
嗯
呃，这个旅行呃老婆的家人给我说我的中文进步了很多，所以
嗯
我很高兴。
嗯，
对。
那很好。对，因为你是去年12月的时候这个开始跟我上课是吗？那你
是。
这几个月你觉得你的中文有进步吗？
对对，太多了。我可以给你的听众说，我给你短信，因为我看你在 YouTube 的视频，所以我发给你说，嘿，Misha，我看见你在 YouTube 的视频，你的中文非常好，你可以给
啊，
我建议一下吗？
就是何为采访我的那个视频吗？
我忘了什么视频，
但是。
但是对我注意到了你的中文发音特别好，所以这就是为什么我在这里和你聊天。
那你刚才说你有遇到这个中国文化，然后那个你在这个学中文的过程中，比如说你去中国的时候，你有
嗯。
没有遇到过什么文化冲突？
哦，特别多，特别多。我觉得，存在文化冲突，但是这就是为什么学习中文很有趣。
嗯
一个很大的文化冲突是中国人太直接，比如如果你变胖了，中国人可能会对你说：“哇，你长得好胖啊！”或者如果你的皮肤看起来不好。中国人可能会对你说：“哇，你的脸这么红，为什么？”所以，这个是以前我觉得这个很奇怪，但是现在我觉得这个很有趣。而且我觉得中国文化是全世界最有意思的文化之一。
嗯
呃，我不知道你的观点是什么，但是我觉得在西方国家，我们的媒体对中国政府比较痴迷，
嗯
但是我觉得他们是要更关注中国文化，而不只是政府。而且我觉得西方人没有意识到中国文化特别多元，比如在中国的西边，你可以看到很多穆斯林的文化，而且在东北那边受到很多俄罗斯和韩国的影响，还有
明白。
四川我老婆的家乡那边有很多文化和语言和菜，所以
嗯
我觉得中国文化特别多元。
对，我不知道在爱尔兰怎么样，但是我们在英国上高中的时候，我们不会学习什么这个关于中国文化或者历史的，会吗？
爱尔兰一样的情况。
那你这几个月大家都能听到你的中文进步的很大，你有什么建议可以给我们的听众们呢？
哦，我不是很好的学生，所以我不应该分享建议。但是我可以说，我的建议是，学新词汇的时候，你需要学发音，这个很重要。而且你开始学中文的时候，别害怕说话。
嗯
你开始说话的时候，你的发音可能听起来很奇怪，但是没关系，加油。
加油。那现在你的目标是什么呢？你有什么目标？
我的目标是，11月的时候我在中国举办婚礼，所以我想我的目标是我的婚礼的时候，我的中国发音进步了更多，这个是我的目标。
OK，那很好。那我希望这个6个月之后，我们可以再次录一期播客，然后在那个播客中，我可以再次采访你，看你的
好好
进步的有多大。
好，可以可以，
好的，非常感谢你，Chris，接受我们的采访。
好，谢谢梅生，谢谢。
But the next day after this video was recorded, I caught up with Chris to interview him in English to reflect on his impressive Mandarin speaking progress over the last 6 months. So I thought I'd get you back on to kind of discuss in English your progress over the last few months, what you've been kind of up to and how you felt about it. So first of all, if you could take me back to when you first reached out. So we've kind of covered this in the Mandarin interview a little bit, but we could elaborate a little bit more now.
Yeah.
So if you take me back to 6 months ago, you kind of reached out, and at that point you had this plan. You were getting doing your wedding ceremony in a year's time. Take us back to
Mm.
that time, what you were kind of thinking and what you were looking for.
Yeah, as you say, we covered it in the Mandarin interview a little bit, but I think I had been learning Chinese for, many years really. So, and I'd gone to China a lot. So I'd reached the point where I could communicate, I could get by, you know, most conversations I needed to have day to day, I could carry out in Chinese. But I guess I felt like I'd kind of reached a wall. I think a lot of learners talk about this. It's very rewarding in the beginning because for the first time you're being able to speak and use the language. But I wanted to kind of reach the next step or the next stage. I think I think to really get to that next stage in Chinese, perfecting the tones is a huge part of that. And I know that's something you talk about a lot in your channel as well. But yeah, for people that don't speak Chinese, maybe that are listening, like when you're speaking English, we're used to so many different accents from all over the world. Someone could speak an Italian accent, German accent, French, whatever it may be, and it's not that big of a deal. But in Chinese, if you're not speaking in a standard accent with correct tones, it does really kind of stop you from reaching that next stage of fluency, I would say. So I saw one of your videos on YouTube. I was very impressed with your accent. I actually showed the video to my wife. She was as well. And I said, I'll just reach out to this guy and just see what happens. And thankfully you replied. And yeah, 6 months later, here we are.
Yeah, that makes sense. And if you could sort of give give like everyone a sense of what's kind of gone into the last 6 months. Everyone's heard the before and after clips, like the progress that you've made. You're obviously a lot more confident now speaking Mandarin, conversing in Mandarin than before. What kind of work has gone into that? Obviously, I know the answer to this because I've been kind of doing that with you and coaching you along the way. But for people were not privy to that process, could you share a little bit about what you've been up to?
I think in the beginning, there was a lot of relearning all things. Like, because in the first few years, I've been winging it a lot of the time, just kind of picking up bits of the language and just trying to use it. But a lot
Mm.
of the time, I ingrained bad habits. So I'd learned words with the incorrect tone pairing, for example. So, yeah, as you know, the first kind of 2 or 3 months together, we were having to go back and kind of relearn things where I'd had kind of deeply ingrained errors with the pronunciation. So yeah, that was a big part of it. I think a lot of our work together as well has really been you coaching me on kind of strategies I can put in place to improve that. We've been doing a lot of tone exercises. And another thing I think is really having you as my coach, even just to keep me on track. So each
Mm.
month, context that anyone's listening, that's how regular me and Misha meet. So it's not like a typical teacher student relationship where we're constantly having classes. It's really like you setting me a goal for the month. Here's what you should be doing. And a month from now, I know, okay, if I don't do this, Meech is going to know. So there's that fear to kind of keep me on track. So yeah, I guess that's been the last 6 months, just kind of consistently relearning old tone pairings and just trying to stay on track.
What would you say have been some things that you found particularly challenging over the past few months then? Is there anything that you found more challenging than you expected?
I think Yeah, I think probably it was kind of humbling in a way to go back to those really basic parts of the vocabulary that I'd known for years, known inverted commas, but having to kind of I think you've got a term that you use for it where you've kind of got a deeply ingrained pattern in your mind, having
Like
to unlearn.
fossilization.
Yeah, fossilization, yeah. Having
Mm.
to kind of overcome that fossilization is harder almost now than learning a new word. If I learn a new word now from scratch, that's fine. I'll just learn it correctly because I've got the tools from speaking with you to kind of identify the tones. But having to overcome the fossilization of simple words that I was pronouncing incorrectly in terms of the tone pairings, that's been a big one. The other thing I would say is even though in the long term this is absolutely a win for me, but I would say at the beginning when we started working together, it almost made me overthink a bit. So I was speaking so fluently before, but not really thinking too much about the accuracy of my tones. But once I started thinking about it, it kind of made me slow down and start overthinking to an extent, uh, while I got used to sort of being more conscious with the language.
Mm. Yeah, that makes sense. And I'm wondering then, like, going into this process 6 months ago, obviously we're halfway through, we've got 6 months to go. But going into this process, has your progress been like better, faster, or how would you kind of say that's? matched your expectations in terms of what you were expecting in terms of progress that you'd make after 6 months versus what you've kind of achieved?
I'd say far beyond my expectations. I think, yeah, I think I'd kind of just accepted that my accent was always going to be the way it was. But yeah, as people listening to the recording can see, it's still not perfect, far from it. But yeah, definitely my accent 6 months ago compared to now is getting a lot closer to being standard. So yeah, it's definitely exceeded my expectations, and we're only halfway there. So excited to see where I am after one year.
In terms of how that's panned out, in terms of how you notice that, is that do you get different reactions now from native speakers? Like we covered this in the podcast we just did in Mandarin, but you went to over the Christmas period to see your relatives in
Mm-hmm.
your mother-in-law in China and other relatives, and did you get different reactions to before?
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of the first thing everyone said. Now, to be fair, Chinese people are always so supportive, even if you've
Mm.
got very Chinese. But nevertheless, yeah, I could tell this time that they really meant it when they were kind of saying to me, "Wow, your Chinese has really come on a lot."
Mm.
Uh, I had been there last summer, so it had only been pretty much 6 months since I'd seen them. So yeah, I think there's an initial kind of shock factor when you speak any Chinese to a Chinese person, but there's kind of a different level of shock factor when they hear you speak in a very standard tone, which is probably what you get a lot now, I guess. But yeah, that's the goal for me.
Yeah, it depends because I'm in Taiwan at the moment, and as I've covered out on my podcast before, like I speak like standard Mandarin from mainland China, so that's kind of a whole different story with that one. But yeah, no, I think one of the things that you noticed that and that you've mentioned is that like you often get praise from native speakers. This just happens regardless of what level you're at. But then as you kind of work on different aspects of your Chinese, the praise becomes kind of more specific. So you might get praised specifically on pronunciation when that wasn't a thing that you got praised on before, or tones and that kind of thing. So yeah.
And yes, the real compliment is when people start correcting your Chinese, and I think that's something I've noticed wife as well that now
Mm.
that she can see I'm really taking it seriously in terms of trying to sound native, she's starting to correct me more on my tones being incorrect. So it's almost like a sign of respect, I guess.
Yeah, and another thing on that note that I found interesting is that I think it's actually easier for native speakers to correct you when your tones are better because before your t like if all your tones are wrong, like or the
Mm,
majority of them are all wrong, then it just kind of sounds off and like
yeah,
it's harder to analyze how. But whereas
yeah,
like
yeah.
most of it's right, and then like you get the one odd glaring mistake here and there, it just stands out more. So it's easier for them to pick it out and correct. So it's also kind of a good sign of progress, like you say.
Yeah, I know you covered that in your podcast about like teaching in Taiwan. And like yeah, I completely get that from a Chinese teacher's perspective. If you've got like 20 beginners in the class, if you're gonna start holding everyone to perfect tone standards, you that would probably be the majority of the lesson, I guess. So
Mm,
yeah, I think one thing that you taught me which was really useful was training myself to be able to hear when something is wrong.
mm.
Um like that was probably our first month really was just really zoning in on the four kind of main tones and to the point where I can hear myself as soon as I've said something incorrectly, you know. So yeah, I think that's a big part of it.
Brilliant. So we've got 6 months until the wedding ceremony. So still plenty of work to do, as you've mentioned. What are you hoping for in the next 6 months? What particular areas are you mainly hoping to improve in?
I think just really locking in on when I'm speaking sentences that I don't default to those fossilized habits. So as you know, Misha, like when I'm if you test me on individual characters now, my tones are generally on point. But as soon as I enter the flow of a conversation and speak naturally, I revert to kind of my strange foreign accent in Chinese at times. So I'd say I'm, as you say, definitely much improved. But I want to get to the point 6 months from now where it just comes completely naturally to me to speak in a native accent.
Brilliant. Well, we'll do this again in 6 months' time. So we'll be recording another video and podcast to kind of showcase your progress over the next 6 months. And so I'll be posting that on the website in 6 months' time so everybody will be able to see your progress. So once again, congratulations on your progress so far and looking forward to working with you again over the next 6 months.
Thanks, Misha. Thanks for all your help. Really appreciate it.
So if you're interested in following in Chris's footsteps and benefiting from coaching from me at the I'm Learning Mandarin gym, then you can go to imlearningmandarin.com and sign up for the newsletter so that you'll be the first to receive updates whenever spaces become available at the gym. When you sign up for the newsletter, you'll also get a free tones mechanic course, which is a video course by me teaching you how to fix your tones. So go to imlearningmandarin.com to find out more.